Good evening and welcome to Inside Government, a public affairs show for the fall 2022 semester here at Cayuga Community College and broadcast on Spectrum, Verizon, Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Access, better known as ARMA, as well as Win 89.1, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. Today is Election Day as we tape, and you have a bit less than 2 hours to get to the polls, and hope you will if you have not. But you can wait 30 minutes right after Inside Government, because we are delighted to have in our studio the Chairman of the Cayuga County Legislature, David Gould, who was elected to the legislature just a year ago and within 2 months was made their chairman of the 15-member legislature at that time. We've asked him on to talk about a number of items. As many of you know, he is the former sheriff of Cayuga County, having served several four-year terms. But we've asked him on to talk about the county budget as well that has to be in place by January 1st, as well as the referendum that is on the ballot today to shrink the Cayuga County Legislature, what happens if it passes, what happens if it fails, and a bunch of other things as we go along. First of all, how are you and your wife doing?
We're doing great, Guy. I appreciate it. And you and Crystal and the little one. I call him the little one. I probably always will.
Sam is getting a little taller now.
He's 40. I'll probably call him the little one.
But you're doing fine?
We're doing fine, thanks.
And members of the legislature?
They're all doing fine.
Good. So I know right now you're in the process. I don't think you have officially presented a budget yet, have you?
We have our first special Ways and Means this Thursday.
This Thursday. So you'll present it to Ways and Means. Mm-hmm. When do you have to have it adopted by?
By the 15th of, it has to be finalized by the 20th of December.
Okay. And your plan is to vote on it earlier than that?
Yes, absolutely.
And so can you tell us what's in the budget draft right now?
Well, I mean, I really have to shout out to all the department heads in our county because they've been so great to work with. Lynn Marinelli, who's our county budget director, for people who don't know that. Lynn's been there, I think, over 20 years. But we've worked hand in hand, talked to every one of the department heads, went through every line in their budgets, 32 departments, every line in their budget, and they've been very, very cooperative, very understanding. We've added some things, we've cut some things, but it's going to be approximately $171, almost $172 million budget.
So for viewers, their two quick questions are, one, will they see a tax hike?
I do not think so. Of course, it has not been voted on yet, so I can't answer.
But while it's being proposed,
yep.
You don't expect a tax hike. Do you expect a tax cut?
That we probably will not have a tax cut. It's possible.
It is. I asked that only because, and I know we'll get into these ARP funds later, but there has been this great infusion of cash, whether it's from Washington or Albany. Mm-hmm. Many governments are spending it, but some have given some thought to just not spending it and reducing tax burden. Has that been a discussion at the legislature?
Not really with ours, because there's been so many needs by different departments in our county, and we've donated or dedicated $500,000 to small businesses that were hurt during COVID. So there's a lot of different spending categories that we've been doing with this. We got almost 14 million. I think the city got 24. We got 14, and most of that is accounted for already. So the process, because I know when you were one of those unopposed candidates last year, so you weren't here for a forum, but the other 5 or 6 forums we did, that was a question Jeremy Boyer asked about how the process would go. Mm-hmm. So you had about a little over $14 million for these funds. How did you have until December, I think, of 2024, but you, by the spring, you had already dedicated almost half of that already. Yeah, it's almost probably 9/10 dedicated already. We're saving some now for last minute stuff, but there's just been so many needs in the county.
So give us some examples of where you were putting. You mentioned small businesses.
Yep, that's $500,000. We have had to put new roofs on some of the county buildings. The parks needed a lot of so
you can use part of this for capital that may have been deferred maintenance.
Right.
Okay. We'll talk about the big deferred maintenance, which is on Genesee Street.
Absolutely.
It's a 6-story building.
Yes,
but we'll get to that later.
One, yep.
Can you use some of your CARES money for that building?
We can, but we
not CARES money, the ARP money.
It's the ARP, but it's American Rescue Plan.
Mm-hmm.
So we can, but we probably won't.
Okay. So let's go back to where you are in the process of your budget. So you present the Ways and Means. They will have several meetings on this?
Actually, 3.
Okay.
We're presenting this Thursday for the 3 different, the biggest departments. Will be in front of Ways and Means.
So Human Services.
human services, mental health, and I believe it's highway.
Highway, okay.
Yep. And then
And then sheriff will go
a
forward,
week
and then
later,
all the others.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. Follow. So we have two special meetings for Ways and Means, then a regular monthly Ways and Means that will probably finalize the budget.
And then that will be presented at a public hearing sometime in December, you would expect?
Probably late November, December.
And then from there, it'll be voted on by the board.
Approved or disapproved.
Yeah, I want a side note on this. An issue that had come up back in the late summer, early spring was this issue, late summer, early fall was skyrocketing gas prices.
Mm-hmm.
And the county did have a chance at that time to put a tax cap on.
Mm-hmm.
The county chose not to. Why did they not do that at that point?
Well, for one reason, you have to do it at a certain time. There's 4 times a year you could do it. And when all this started, the next mandated date was September 1st for us. So we thought by September 1st, the gas prices were going to come down again. So instead of doing that, we took out the fuel tax, the fuel oil tax from the county. We took that out of the budget. So no one has to pay the fuel oil tax for the county this year.
But that's mainly rural. That's not
really.
Does it hit city?
It does. It
Okay.
absolutely does, yeah. And
So-
that was almost 1.4 million.
So are there in the draft that you have now any extras in the budget that are, we're doing this one time only, or we're starting this new program at this stage?
Not really. No, I mean, it's pretty much the same as before. It's, as I said, it's higher budget. It's gone up naturally because everything else has gone up. We've had 4 contracts that run out the end of this year. So
And I know you're coming from negotiations from one of them.
Yes, exactly.
So where are you on the 4 contracts? Where are you on settlement of those?
The first one, which is SEAC, which is the deputies at the county jail, that is almost finalized.
Okay.
We started with the road deputies probably 3-4 weeks ago. Some people came down with COVID, so we had to cancel that. That's rescheduled for the end of this month. Then they have a lieutenant's contract, which will be immediately following that. And CSEA, we've already started.
Okay. And so your expectation is that you'll calculate those numbers somewhere in your budget.
They're already figured in by Lynn.
Okay.
Yes.
And in speaking of COVID, I mean, how has that impacted county operations right now? Are you losing a lot of people?
No, not really. I mean, it's like any other business. I mean, the county office or the county is a business. It's like any other. We have a certain amount of employees that have been out, and everybody knows this is a type that spreads like wildfire. But it hasn't really affected our business day to day.
And are people still working remote?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, we just came up and it's going to be approved with a county remote policy that we just rewrote to make sure everybody was on the same page with it. It was being done, but it was never a policy.
Okay. So can some departments work remote all the time?
Not all the time. No,
Okay.
There's a certain criteria in that where the department heads, the employees of each department head, the department head has to prove it for the manpower that they can spare, and then I approve at the department heads for working at home.
Okay. So I mentioned the extras. I know we were hopefully going to have the E. John Gavris Center on next, and one of the items that they had sent us some topics about was they were going to go to the legislature. I know you were very involved in human services. How many boards are you still on, buddy?
I'm still on probably between 25 and 27.
Okay, which is crazy land with the job, and I'm sure somebody in your household says that as well. But I won't mention that
every day. Yes,
as every day. But E. John Gavris Center runs the Imagination Library with the Dolly Parton Imagination. That's where they give books in the county from 0 to 5, so it's about 60 books, depending on if you register when you're born. Your parents register you at Auburn Community Hospital. Have they made a request as of yet? Do you know?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I know that I just timed off that board, but I'm still on their foundation board.
Okay.
And we've been trying to do this independently, trying to go to fundraisers and stuff like that, like every other non-for-profit in the county.
Right. The other one that always comes up is, and you have a mixed, not you, the legislature gets on this track every now and then, has been local libraries.
Mm-hmm.
And in the past, the legislature has sometimes funded full requests, sometimes not. Are they in the budget this year?
They're in the budget, but it depends on if the legislature passes it.
And is there anything that you wanted in the budget and you just say this is not the right time for it?
No, there was a couple new positions that some of the department heads asked for, and we went through, Lynn and I talked to them, and we went through, can we live without it right now? And we can. So some of them were not put in the budget.
So one that you did create in the spring, not you filled in the spring, was your new operations officer. This is Shireen Androsco, who many know
Yep.
is a friendly face down at the Department of
DMV.
Motor Vehicles. Yep. What are her duties?
Her duties are the day-to-day. I mean, I'm there 12 hours a day, every day of the week. But she intermingles with the department heads and listens to their complaints, their good things, their bad. So she does the day-to-day operations with the department heads. And she's done just an outstanding job.
So does she act as a funnel to you
Yes.
of what needs to be acted upon?
She actually works directly for the chair of the legislature.
And then I know you took your position took a pay cut of about $15,000 when so it went from 60 to 45 to get that position in.
Yes.
I'm assuming you're continuing that in.
Yes.
Presenting that as
Yes.
as a next.
Absolutely.
This goes back to a more general question. You haven't had a county administrator. So let's say for the record, you've only been there since January 1st. Mm-hmm. It may sound and feel longer.
It does.
But the county has been without a county administrator since spring of 2019.
Yes.
So really going on 3.5, almost 4 years now, when Justin Woods was left at that time. Where are we on, or where are you in the body on the idea of either filling that position, creating a county executive, putting something on the ballot? I know you were supposed to have that as a item on the ballot today. Mm-hmm. We'll get into that in a moment. But where are you in the general consensus of your 15 members?
Well,
if there is any.
There's no consensus. We've talked about it at probably 3 different government ops meetings, and it's called the Forum of Government. And Chris Petras is in charge of that. He's the chairman of government ops. We've talked about it. We've decided that after the first of the year, we're going to look at it. We're going to do a lot of education, whether it's be the county executive, leave it as it is with the county chair, or have a county administrator. Those are really the 3 main choices.
Because you still have a county administrator. Technically, you can appoint a county administrator now, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So it was supposed to, I went through some news stories from July where you were asking some questions. Why didn't it move concurrently with the redistricting this year?
Because there wasn't enough known about it. All 15 of us got to be educated about this because it's a very important move. If you go to a county executive, that county executive gets to choose a lot of different things that the legislature has no control over. So it goes back to does the legislature...
So is it a power or a turf issue?
No, it's not. I think it's just an understanding issue. It's lack of knowledge of what that county administrative person would do, what the county administrator would do, county executive, or the chair.
I asked that because, again, a year ago in this studio, we had all the candidates for the most part here, and they did seem all over the place.
Yeah, still are.
They still are.
Absolutely.
Do you, not that this is your job, but maybe it is. Do you have to build that consensus?
Well, I certainly have a lot to do with it, just being the chair. Not me, the chair.
Right.
Everyone who's sitting in the chair has a lot to do with it. But yeah, it's going to take a consensus naturally. But again, we need to be better educated when we make a choice for this. Because it affects the whole county.
Yeah. Do you have a way you're leaning right now?
No, I don't. To be honest with you, I've thought about leaning with just the chair. The county administrator, if that's the choice, we have to change a lot of things. A lot of things. That's why the last 2 hasn't worked out. A county executive, again, learning the pros and cons of having a county executive is very intense, and all of us need to be educated better before we make a dedicated choice.
I don't want to get too bogged down in this, but this is a major change here.
Sure.
So at one point, you were going to name a commission, a charter commission. Did you get that far?
No.
So nobody's been named. But let me back up a step.
Yeah.
Do you expect that you will be chairman next year? Will you seek to be chairman next year? This cannot go into a divorce file.
Yeah.
So we won't put it on screen.
Okay, good. I hope my wife's not going to watch this. But,
okay.
But I would like to be chair next year.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we've started together, but that I've spearheaded that I really want to finish before I get done.
So with that in mind, do you expect that you would, and maybe this is the cart before before the horse or vice versa. But in most instances, there is this theory that you would appoint a charter commission to then make a recommendation. But do you think you have to educate people first before you even get to the charter?
Yeah, I've already talked to the county attorneys about this. They've done a lot of research. They're all ready to come to some of our meetings and talk to us and just explain the three different categories that I just explained. Again, I can't to keep going back to it, but this is a very important decision for the county. This person or this whatever we pick, administrator, executive, or chair, is going to have a lot of authority, and we need to make sure we know everything about it.
So the thought was that it would be on the ballot this year.
It's not going to.
And it's not today.
Right.
But the thought, the original thought, this is again before you got there,
Right.
before you were chair, the idea that with reduction of the legislature would concurrently be on the ballot so that they could be implemented in 2023. Do you at least think that some measure will get before voters in 2023 when
Yes.
all the legislature's on?
I feel that it will be, especially this decision with the county administrator and county executive. Now, as far as the referendum that's on the back of the ballot today, which a lot of people don't know about, I hope
Right.
they look. But I'm hoping that the people that are taking the ballots make sure that people know there's two referendums on the back. One is dropping the legislature from 15 to 11, which I am definitely in favor of. Smaller government is always better, if you ask me. And that will take effect January 1st of 2024. That doesn't take effect next year. It takes effect the year after.
So let's skip to that for a second. So currently it's 15. You move it down to 11
If it's voted in.
if it's voted in. You had a majority of legislators who wanted to put it on the ballot, correct?
Yes.
You may not have a majority of legislators. Well, you may still have a majority of legislators who support it, but there are some people who are campaigning against it right now.
Yeah, that I think some of them have actually changed their minds since the vote, but the vote was to put it on the referendum this year.
And does this get rid of weighted voting altogether?
Yes. If it goes to 11, it does.
Yeah. So let's just. I want to talk about passage. We'll get to if it's defeated.
All right.
If it gets passed, you get rid of weighted voting.
Right.
That means that and as we introduced every candidate last year, we said they were for 2-year terms. So whether it's 11 or 15, doesn't matter. Everybody's up for election next year.
Yes.
Including yourself.
Yes.
So you ran for a 2-year term.
Right.
Everybody
did. Yes.
And so if that passes to 11, well, first of all, there are some people who are close. They're not but they were close to a 3-term limit. Do you expect those legislators not to run again? Or does this mix everything up?
Because I don't think the only one was Mike Didio.
Okay.
That would be his 12 years is next year.
Okay.
So he would have to not run again. But he's the only one. Like Chris and
Chris Priestris
and Andy, they'll both that'll be their 3rd term starting January of 2024.
So, but you would expect that they would continue with that
Yeah,
premise
their
that they
choice.
run and they're elected.
Absolutely. It's their choice.
So that does mean that some, going from 15 to 11, you are going to have some legislators who possibly are going to have to run against each other.
If that's what the electors choose, yeah. Either that or they won't run.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have one that won't likely run. Mr. Didio. It's not the law that they can't run for a 4th 30-year term. It's the assumed policy.
Exactly.
So if Mr. Didio decides to run, you could have. But if he doesn't, you could have some members of the legislature running against each other.
Absolutely. Yes.
So we've seen in the Citizen a number of maps. Let's talk about the county maps first versus the city map.
Okay.
The county map, are those district lines already designed, which towns will have, or do they still have to be done?
No, they're done. They were done by the Board of Elections by Katie and Cheryl probably 6 months ago.
Okay.
We've
and
had
in
time
any
to
of those
study 'em.
cases, are people running against each other in those cases?
Well, again, we won't know until if it's passed, we won't know who wants to run. But it's possibility.
So there are some people in those 7 districts
Right.
that could run against each other.
Could.
Is the way they're drawn.
As it was. Yeah.
Are the city lines drawn yet?
City lines are drawn too.
So they were drawn by the Board of Elections versus the city,
Yes.
which did them in 1994.
Yes.
Okay.
Katie and they did the new ones too because of the redistricting. They did the new ones in the city too.
Well, that's
Because you
what I'm
would
saying.
lose two city
But in
legislators.
1994, it was the city council that drew
Right.
them, not the board of
Right,
elections.
it was Board
on
of
there.
Elections, yeah.
All right. So let's go back just one more time to the county executive,
Sure.
because we mentioned the word weighted voting.
Mhm.
Weighted voting is still going to be in place next year.
Exactly, yes. It won't take
Doesn't
effect
matter.
until.
Won't take
Right.
effect. So you got to get really 8 members of the legislature all on the same page.
Mhm.
Whether it's stick with a county chair, go to a county administrator, or go with a county executive.
If it's finalized next year, you're right. You do have to have it.
Do you think you can get 8?
That I don't have any idea, because I haven't even thought about it, because this is my 4th time. People have to be educated a lot more than they are.
So it could, in essence, be, if no action is taken, which is an action, but if no action is taken, it could be bumped off to the legislature in 2024, whether it's 15 members or 11. But if it's 15, it's still weighted voting. If it's 11, there's no weighted voting.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I'm in favor of not bumping it off. I mean,
You would like to have this resolved.
I like to have,
now.
once I start something, I'm the type of person, you've known me long enough, then let's get it done. Because if you don't, you push it down the road. This county office building has been pushed down the road since 2004.
All right. Well, let's jump to. I got some other things, but let's
Yeah.
go. Let's go to the county office building. So there's been an unending debate. You and I were talking beforehand. You said the first time you remembered this was when you were sheriff in 2004.
Well, I wasn't even sheriff yet. I was going to the legislative meetings thinking I was going to run for sheriff, and maybe I wanted to learn how it was done. But that's when they started talking about replacing this county office building.
So do you see? So there have been a lot of different plans.
An awful lot.
So some have. I'll just talk about 3.
Mhm.
There's been the idea of just renovate the 6-story building.
Mhm.
There's been the theory knock down the 6-story building, but beforehand build behind and to the side.
Mhm.
You own the lots there,
Mhm.
and then make parking in the front. There's been the thought of building a whole new structure outside of your old offices on County House Road. There has been this idea of bringing it to the Finger Lakes Mall. I think I can come up with 4 more.
There's
but this is not
more than
bingo.
4, yeah.
Okay. So where are you all?
Well, we're still in the discussion. Actually, I was talking about it before I came here. Some legislators were in my office. We were talking about it. We talked about it at the legislative meeting last week. I can't tell you which way we're leaning because it hasn't been put up for a vote. We're still getting information about different things. I think the 3 main choices right now are either the mall, to refurbish the county office building the way it is, maybe add a wing around where we can move each floor into that wing while that floor is being remodeled.
And it would give you space in the future
Right.
for other projects.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Or
And you have a lot of rental property as well. Not rental property. You have a lot of items that are outside of your building.
Oh, absolutely. We
that
have
you-
several more county buildings.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you could also consolidate it.
It wouldn't be all of them because it wouldn't be big enough, but a lot of them, like mental health, would
All
stay
right.
where it is.
So mall, renovate with a wing.
Mhm.
What's the third?
Or take that building down and start from scratch.
There.
You have
What's your you have served in a number of capacities,
Mhm.
Both as a department head, independently elected department head, as a chairman of the legislature, as a taxpayer. What are you looking at?
my best choice. I mean, we've had the vendor come in and give us information. My best choice, unless somebody changes my mind, is remodel the county office building floor by floor, build what's called a rectangle around, maybe 1 floor, 2 floors, where as we remodel each floor, those employees go into that already built a rectangle, so that way we don't have to move them out somewhere. They're still in the building, and refurbish every floor.
Is the downside to moving to the Finger Lakes Mall, separate from a cost issue, is that it isn't in the center of the city and it's not on a necessarily a easily accessible bus route or walkable for people who use county services?
Well, that is a downside. Yeah, that doesn't mean that some people don't feel that it's still better.
No,
out
I
there,
understand,
yeah.
but that is
it's a
that's been
downside.
one of the criticisms.
It's a downside for me.
Okay.
I like where it is.
When do you see the county making a decision?
Very quickly. Very quickly. And I say very quickly, possibly even before the first of the year.
Okay.
If not, soon after that. I've made very clear to all the legislators and everybody to listen to me before I leave office, whether it be next year or I run again, before the end of next year, I want to have a commitment from the legislature. I want to have the specs done. I want to have a contract signed.
So before I get to the two last subjects, the way I hear you talk, if you could get a lot of things checked off, you haven't made a decision whether you'll seek election in
I've
2020.
not made a decision yet. Yes.
Okay. So you got two different positions. One you have unfilled, one you have filled. So let's talk about the unfilled. Mary Beth Leeson, we
Yes.
are delighted to have her in the rotunda up here as our new comptroller.
But very lucky to have
we
her.
are very lucky to have her.
Yes.
But she has left the county
Mhm.
as from your finance department. Where are you in the search for a replacement?
I actually talked to our HR woman lady this morning. There's been some interviews. I believe there might be one or two more. So I've kind of, and
She left at the end of August, so will you have somebody on?
Yeah,
before...
actually, she left at the end of this last month, October.
Well, she's marking both jobs.
Yes, but her official leave date was
Okay.
October 31st.
Okay, so do you think you'll have somebody on before the first of the year? Is that the
Yes,
plan?
I am absolutely hoping so. Yes.
So the other one has been, in the past, has been a somewhat of a revolving doors, this emergency management office, where you've had a lot of, and you've worked with, how many emergency management?
Oh my God, I can't even count them, to be honest with you.
So you have a new person.
Yes.
He is Riley Shirtliff, if I'm pronouncing it.
Exactly, yeah.
When did he start, or hasn't he started yet?
No, he has started. He started about a month ago.
And he, while he is coming via Alaska, is a 2012 graduate of Southern Cayuga High School.
Mm-hmm.
And why did you hire him?
Well, when we did the interviews, I was on that interview team. When we did the interviews, probably 2 months ago now, we interviewed him on a Zoom from Alaska. He moved to Alaska from Moravia, from Genoa area, to a fire chief's job up there because he always wanted to be a fireman. And that just came to his fancy. And he moved up there within a half hour, 45 minutes of interviewing him. We thought he was top notch. He has relatives here. He has history, a background of EMO, and he's a very young, intelligent man. And so we, probably 3 weeks later after the interviews were completed, all the committee agreed that we would hire him. Called him up, he offered him, and that next day he took it. He just came back from Alaska probably 3 weeks ago.
So we talked about budget. Did you need to get done before January 1st? You've talked about this issue of county executive, county manager, or county administrator, or doing nothing, because you can do a county manager too.
Sure.
A county administrator and a county manager are two different.
Two different, but pretty much the same.
Right,
But
they're
different categories.
legally they're.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've talked about the county office building. Anything else on your short-term agenda that you, in the next 6 months, boy, I'd like to get a vote on this.
Well, there's 2 new department heads that we've hired. Will be hiring. One is a brand new youth department. Lloyd Hoskins, everybody in the county, I think Lloyd retired from the county. He's come back part-time for the indigent services coordinator. But we hired a new lady to be our youth bureau director.
Who is that?
Some I can't even think of her first name
Okay,
now.
that's okay.
But she just started last week.
Okay.
So she came from Syracuse. She actually started. She ran the lights on the lake.
Okay.
So she's got a history of working with youth. She's from our county. She'll do a great job. And I've brought up, since I've been here, years and years ago, this county's never had a grant writer, a grant director to write grants. I wanted that. I've got it through the ledge, and we are now. It's gone out by our human resources director for people to apply for our grant writer position. And I'm hoping that is going to be done by the first of the year too.
And will Mr. Hoskins still continue as your assigned counsel for the time being?
Yes. Yep.
Chairman, thank you. Thanks
Thank
for being
you, Guy.
You came in February when you first got on, and then we had obviously elections and COVID in between, but we're delighted to have you here in the
It's
studio.
always an honor to be here with you. You know that. I've been here how many times?
A lot of times. I would love to have you back in. We would love to have you back in the spring to talk about where you are, budget passed, and whatever happens today on Election Day, and come in and see us. And we do want to remind you that you now have about an hour and a half to go before the polls close. If you have not voted, get out there and vote. A programming note, we had hoped, as I mentioned, to have representatives of the E. John Gavra Center here next, but one of our guests has tested positive. That does not mean that they necessarily have COVID, as they've explained to us, but we will hopefully have them on in the spring for an update. Next week, we do wrap up our season with Auburn City Manager Jeff Dygert and Auburn Housing Authority Executive Director Stephanie Hutchinson on 2 separate shows. We hope you'll join us then. You can send us your questions for them at cozguytho@aol.com. Or if you have ideas for future guests when we return in the spring for Inside Government or Beyond the Front Page, you can send those to cozguytho@aol.com. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. We thank you for watching, and be safe out there.
Thank you, everyone.